This conference is organized by the Luxembourg Transition Platform. You might never have heard of because it's just starting to organically exist. There has been a number of years ago, CEL, the Center of Ecological Learning Luxembourg, kicked off a movement, and there are a number of initiatives that Katie will present later on, so you can understand a little bit the context in Luxembourg before we have a wider picture. So my name is Nori, and this is Katie, and we will just host the first part, give some explanations before we give the microphone to Rob Hopkins. So this conference tonight is a big opportunity to have an exchange, and we will have space to do that after the conference, on what kind of initiatives, what kind of strategies can we put up together to respect the planetary boundaries, to forge a society that is socially in the social cohesion, and how we can transform the society we live in something that is more able to the future. So the transition movement has been initiated in Totnes by Rob Hopkins, his students and citizens from the local community, and the aim was to enfranchise us from fossil fuels and climate damage, and to build up a resilient society. So when it comes back to Luxembourg, what could it mean, a resilient society? In a period where we talk a lot about nation branding, about something like "Wir willen bleiben wat wir sind," to translate, we want to stay who we are, which is a historical sentence. Put in that context, what does that actually mean? Who are we, and what kind of society would we like to be? We are also getting prepared for the climate conference COP21 in Paris by the end of the year, and Luxembourg will hold the EU presidency in that period. So this is maybe also a reason we are particularly sensitive to these questions in these times. We are also here to make a bridge between the big picture and concrete action, between transition in a wider range with all the little steps that all of us can do. So this evening is made possible also because of a number of actors, and I would like to thank them on this place. We had patronage from the Sustainable Development Ministry, the Ministère du Développement Durable et Infrastructure, and a couple of months ago, we had exchanges with the Environment Ministry, with Camille Girard, that you might know. He's Secretary of State now, and he has been for many years Mayor of Beckerich, which have done transition for many years, and also with Carole Dischbusch, who is Minister of Environment. And the exchanges were about how can we bring the little actions in the field to a broader range. How can we really accompany grassroots activities that are just coming up. So we are very happy to have that exchange with them, and to have a partnership now to work really on transition on the local level. I also would like to thank the Luxembourg Institute for Science and Technology list, because they are the original reason why Rob Hopkins is here. They invited them for a seminar with the construction sector that Rob was holding this morning. So thank you very much to the team around Valérie, Paula, Paul and the others to have made this possible. Also thank you to Luca, Luxembourg Center for Architecture, because they have done a great job really in also reaching out to the architect community, and make it possible that people that we usually don't reach that easily are also coming tonight. And then finally, also thank you to all of you, because you are here. So some of you are already active in initiatives like this, some others are just interested, or maybe you will become active tomorrow. So this is very important. As I said, I mean, you are the seeds of transition. And last but not least, I would like to thank also very warmly the Athénée. That's the place where you are right now. Because when I approached them to organize this conference here, Mr. Zalentini, the director of this school, and Jean-Louis Guint, the professor who is sitting just in front of me here, they did not hesitate a second to say, yes, of course you can come. And also the team around Mr. Scholtes, who did all the arrangements, the logistical support. Please allow me to just make a short contribution to my experience in the Athénée, because I was student here for 7 years. That was early 90s, and this school has forged a lot of vision in how you could get involved. In that period, Mr. Gint, he was teacher here, and we had an activity that was the first activity I was ever involved in as a student. We were reassembling cans and one-way bottles for 1 week, and we piled it up in the courtyard, and it was a huge picture of really a lot of litter you could see, and that was so impressive that we could really feel, okay, this is something that makes sense, because this activity helped us to convince the school to abandon one-way bottles and to reduce the litter. Athénée is still working on this kind of activities until today. Of course, there has been a larger context, like the Projet d'établissement Think Global, Act Local, or in German, Global und vernetzt Denken sowie nachhaltig handeln. And these initiatives that has run for a couple of years brings together students, teachers and technical staff, not only to understand about what sustainable development is, but also how you can do concrete action. For instance, there is a takeaway project that they are developing because the students tend to go to different bars and takeaways in the surroundings, and you can imagine every day how much litter that produces. They are working on that project really to make it something with like non-one-way objects where you, sorry, I forgot the word, but how you can bring your food to the place where you will consume it. Later on we will pass around the microphone, and maybe there will be some contributions here from the Athénée to explain more about initiatives that are going on. Yeah, the school is a very important place. I am not a teacher, but many people are, like Rob Hopkins started as a teacher, Katie is a teacher, and many people in the transition movement is a teacher, so it is important to pass on that message to a younger generation, and I'm very happy about this. So I will pass on the microphone to Katie, because she will present you a little bit about the context here in Luxembourg, what the different steps we did so far, and we will be happy to engage with you during the break afterwards if you want more information.
Thank you, Nori. Okay, so I will just set the stage for the main act and talk a little bit about the story of transition in Luxembourg and how all that came about. So when in 2010 I founded the Center for Ecological Learning Luxembourg, I had been very inspired by eco-villages, but also by the permaculture movement, which I had spent some time with, and also by Romanian farmers and peasants and shepherds who I was living with. And so I was kind of looking for a positive, solution-oriented way of dealing with the multiple ecological, economic and social crises of our time. So basically here I wanted to create something that would connect all kinds of things that were already happening, but that maybe had just one particular focus. Yeah, so basically from the permaculture movement I took the idea that, yeah, there is designs, this is not inevitable, we can design our futures. From the eco-villages, I took, for instance, that it's really important to focus on the social well-being of the communities, and also focus on, yeah, how the inner relates to the outer. So it's for all these reasons that, to me, the transition movement was very attractive then, and it kind of made a lot of sense to say, okay, we're not going to go and do some kind of eco-village somewhere else, some kind of utopia, but we're going to start right here, right now, with what we have in our communities, and kind of see what we can do in a kind of experimental way. So it was this very participatory, inclusive approach that I hadn't really found in other parts of the environmental and social movements that I've been part of. And so it's in the spirit that I was really inspired by transition. Most notably by this integrated approach of head, heart and hands. So it's not just about talking about things, it's not just about doing things, but it's really about connecting everything together. And that also means investing maybe sometimes difficult emotions, maybe sometimes lots of joy and celebration and all kinds of things. So it's about bringing all these things together to me. And so it was really about this can-do attitude of transition that involves all the citizens, and that kind of makes us all co-responsible for bringing about this future or the present that we want to actually be living in. Yeah, that might look like this, I don't know. Yeah, so at CEL, we were really inspired by various patterns that we found in nature, so we really let nature be our teacher as well. And so one thing that we were inspired by was the mycelium, which is a kind of, if you have a forest ecosystem, you have an underground fungal network that cooperates with other soil organisms and the tree roots to kind of exchange nutrients and make things possible. So it's one of the ideas that CEL was going to do, to kind of bring everything together and allow projects and connections to flourish, really. And yeah, so that was one of the ideas. And the other idea was, of course, the cell. You know, once upon a time, you had, in evolutionary terms, you had single cells that were just hanging out there, and they decided to work together to form multicellular organisms. And that way, it was much more fun, and also better to deal with environmental challenges that were coming up. So yeah, that's another metaphor that is kind of guiding the work we've been doing at CEL. Finally, broccoli. No, fractals. You might have heard of fractals in the sense that it's something mathematical and strange that you find everywhere in nature, which is a pattern that is of self-similarity at different scales. So basically, you have a magical thing that happens when you have a broccoli cell with the DNA inside. You have all the information for the plant to grow in a certain way, and in a very beautiful way in this case, without having, you know, the exact description of how that's going to happen. So you don't describe everything. You don't say, okay, after you grow a little bit like this, you grow a little bit like this, and then like this. But you just give, you know, some basic rules of patterning, and like this, you can create something at different levels that will kind of look the same, but is different. So maybe you can recognize that in the transition movement, I'm not sure. But I think it's also a very good guiding metaphor. Finally, there's the idea of circles. So basically, we work in circles, we work as equals, we work as citizens, and we kind of see where all that takes us, and what we can do with this kind of basic consent governance forms, or, you know, how to kind of organize so we can create different projects that work well together. So, yeah, that's all I want to say to that. So SAL was founded as an ASBL, as a kind of non-profit organization in 2010, and it's got headquarters in Backridge, where also lots of other transition affinity projects are happening. So it's a place, but it's also a structure. And as a structure, it organizes permaculture courses and some bits of consulting. And we've been talking about this emerging réseau luxembourgeois de la transition. So basically, it also connects to the international level by being the kind of hub for transition and kind of connecting to the larger international network, basically. Yeah. I'm just going to do a brief timeline of all the kind of projects that can be associated with the Réseau National Luxembourgeois de la Transition. And it's kind of just to say that, like human beings, these different projects are autonomous. You know, they kind of they breathe and they happen and they're alive, but they're also very dependent on their environment. So they also relate to each other. It's this paradox of living that, you know, you have things that are alive that are both autonomous and part of something larger. So, and I would like, it's in this spirit that I would like to present this, these kinds of projects that have been emerging from SAL, basically, or with SAL. Okay, so after the launch in January 2011 in Backridge, which attracted about 100 people, there was bits and pieces forming here and there. First, the Permaculture Action Group. And if you're here, you can also shout if you want. You don't have to. So the Permaculture Action Group is a group that has a quite modest scope to permaculturize the whole world, I guess, starting from people's gardens and kind of doing work in each other's gardens. That's it. And then we had in 2011, in October and November and so, we had some evenings at the Exit 07, just 500 meters from here, that way, and kind of where people were coming together around the city of Luxembourg to form the Luxembourg Transition Initiative. And it was very much focused, the discussion at the time, on community gardening. And then in 2012, there was the first community garden that kind of emerged from this.
Whoa!
Yay! Okay, and so that was an interesting adventure. And then a bit later in 2012, Seed also emerged, which is an ASBL, which you can find later on there. Are there any people from Seed here? Yo! And so they are focused on seed saving, how to produce artisanal quality seeds for, growing our food. And yeah, so very important, start with seeds. A bit later, or kind of in April, around the same time, Transition MENAT emerged, which was focused around different things, and it's been really flourishing initiative. So in the south of the country, Urban Gardening is one of their groups. They also do something called MESA, which is basically a food co-op, evolving and growing links with Transition Luxembourg as well. Also an energy cooperative with solar energy. Anybody here from that? And also, Transition MENAT has been heavily involved in co-organizing the DIY festival, Do It Yourself Festival, which is basically a skill-sharing, no-money festival held at the Kulturfabrik, and I think it's almost a tradition now. Right, so after that, we had the emergence of something called Art for Change, Capoeira group.
Whoa!
Then we had Transition West, which is a rural initiative that's kind of having different challenges to urban initiatives, because everybody pretty much has a garden, so nobody's interested in community gardening. And so they've been very much focused on like pulling together different projects that are already existing in this area, which is not few. So working together with Beki, the regional money that was created there a few years ago, as well as with a rural development program called LEADER, which is about creating quality of life in the countryside. And it's also very interesting because it's quite participatory, has like similar structures to transition. And so hopefully we're going to have an earthship there at some point, something like that. And there is an aquaponics group, which is about people. If you haven't heard of aquaponics, it's a kind of closed loop system where you grow both plants and fish at the same time. It's usually it's quite big in tropical places, but there's ways to do this also in temperate regions like ours. And then in 2014 we had the emergence of Terra, beautiful agroecological center in Eshafet, which we just visited. So yeah, any Terra people here? Any people who get their veg from Terra? Okay. Yeah, so you know all about it. It's the first CSA in Luxembourg, and hopefully the first of many, and the first of beautiful Luxembourgish vegetables. Okay, and then we also, in the north of the country, things are also waking up. We have a strong collaboration between two initiatives from Mersch and Eislik, kind of working on food projects. We have, also associated type of projects. That this one is called ad hoc. It's evolved from a previous group that wanted to create an eco-village here, and now its focus has changed because it's more about being a platform for bringing about cooperative and kind of more social and integrated housing. So, which is a kind of large-scale project in a country that has really high land prices. And then last year there was a cooperation between Life Asbjørn, which is a bit of an older Asbjørn that was working also on simplicity of living, so very much aligned already, like long time ago, with the principles of transition. And together with the CEL volunteer, developed a project called Wandelbar, which is a kind of play on words to change bar and a nomadic bar, something like this, as far as I understand. And it's basically a project to bring about community within interesting settings of cooking together and producing no waste by using vegetables that would be otherwise have thrown out, I guess. And a lot of things can happen when you cook together and eat together. So, yeah. And then we have also last year transition Bonnevoie. So, hang on. Transition Bonnevoie, which is the second initiative in the city, working together with the other one. And they had one project where they were reclaiming public space from dog poo already, and a gift box and some other things are happening there. So it seems to be really thriving in terms of citizen engagement. Yeah, that's just a gratuitous photo of some permaculture garden that's not in Luxembourg. But just to say that there are other groups forming. One is called Changing the World, and PIT is involved in that. And yeah, there's a little bit more happening, which I'm not going to go into just now. Oh yeah, and then final thing. So the Transition Minute people have been working really hard on something called Chantier de la Transition. And it's basically a project to have a space in Ash that can be used for citizen projects, for social and ecological projects, for all kinds of things. And so this has been happening last weekend, where some people got together and kind of tried to see what would the program be of this thing and how can we actually make this a very nice collaborative space. So it's important to create places like that where, you know, things can happen in different ways. And that is one of them. So that's a really cool project too. Okay. So this is a group picture of all the Transition Luxembourg. And it is still incomplete, as you can see, because it needs you and your ideas. And really, kind of, in order to make something more complete and more beautiful, it really needs your input. So we would be really happy if you come and talk to any of us over there at the stand, or you just find people who, you know, who you want to do a project with, and you just start. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. No, I'm not going to make another talk. It's just briefly some logistics. So we had some contents. Now we can just some. So we will have food and drinks afterwards. If you need to go to the toilet, that's upstairs. If you want to see those examples on the wall, we have a pop-up exhibition. And as Katie said, some people, we have some information here and seats for the new season. There are some books and DVDs, mainly from Rob Hopkins and the transition movement. And yeah, to make all this possible, as I said, we got a lot of support, but we would be very glad to get some financial support to cover the cost of the conference. So Katie is giving around 2 boxes, and you can put in whatever you like. Credit cards are accepted as well. I would say around €5 would be great to really help to cover the costs, and what is left can be really invested in projects. And Katie will also give around the list, because that is another treasure that you would leave your contact details, so we can keep in touch with you after this conference. So now we come to the main dish, which is Rob Hopkins. He is one of the UK's most influential environmentalists, and I would say, to me at least, not only in the UK but in the entire world. That would be my guess. He is co-founder of the Transition Network and the movement. In 2005 he moved to Devon and set up transition town Totnes. So Totnes has become one of the most well-known cities in the world. Just an anecdote I heard about Totnes is they have the Totnes Pound, and apparently many transition tourists go to Totnes and they bring back a pound as a proof to their friends that they were there, and that was really the problem, because a lot of local currency was going away. So this was really in 2005 starting as a community-led effort, and it was spreading very fastly around Britain and the entire world. And there are much more than 1,000 initiatives now in more than 50 countries. So in 2007, Rob formed the Transition Network, which is supposed to give really support to networks, to local groups, because the questions that come up when you do an initiative tend to be all the same in many different places. So in that context, Rob wrote a couple of books that are very helpful and that are really used by a lot of transition groups. There's the Transition Handbook that came out 2008, then the Companion 2011, and then now his most recent book, The Power of Just Doing Stuff 2013. We have those books on the stand. And yeah, Rob got a lot of many different awards. I won't count them all because it will take a lot of time. But The Guardian, for instance, told him a Green Community Hero. And yeah, we are very proud that he's here. Originally, he's a teacher in permaculture. And so, Rob, the floor is yours. So maybe you can also explain how you came there. And yeah, we are looking forward very much for your presentation. Thank you very much.